they use all these terms interchangeably without defining. They
Yeah.
say same-sex
Hmm.
attraction, they're throwing in desire, temptation, and when the Bible sees desire and temptation as different categories.
I'd love to talk about what you talk about in lesson 4, because I think especially right now, this is so important for people to understand. Years ago, Christopher, I have a close friend of mine in my life that has a particular struggle with same-sex attraction. And this is somebody that I love dearly and have been very close with for many, many, many years, over 20 years. And back 20 years ago, I might have said, well, this is something that this person, I don't think I would have said it was an identity, but I would have just said, maybe I would have errantly said, this is who they are. And
Mm.
yet they need to, walk and live celibate. And so I think inadvertently I was accepting that as an identity, which ministries like yours and Rosaria Butterfield have really helped me clarify these things. Because sometimes, and I think we talked about this on the last podcast you were on with me, sometimes in apologetics, we'll just say homosexual behavior is
Mm.
wrong. But it's more complicated than that, because you also have, and you laid this out so beautifully, and I'd love for you to talk about it, because there's a difference between attraction, desire, and temptation. It's not a
Yes.
sin to be tempted, but there can be desires and attractions that are sinful. Help us parse through that, because there is a push, as we've talked about before, called SideB Christianity, which teaches wrongly. You and I both agree this is a false teaching, that, homosexual behavior is wrong, but you can assume the identity. You can call yourself gay. You can, embrace those category identities, which I think is a false teaching. But help us parse through that. What's the difference between attraction, desire, and temptation?
Yeah, and so you bringing up, and people are unaware about this Side B framework, spiritual friendship, revoice. It's essentially, you know, people will say, you know, when I say I am gay, I'm not saying I do. I don't say
Hmm.
this, but a person will say, I identify as gay celibate Christian, but they say that the term gay doesn't mean that I'm acting on it. It just means that I have these attractions.
Hmm.
Um, and if I could just have a quick side note, um, the people that use that narrow definition that it only means attraction is so small in the broader scope of all of humanity, meaning the world and the actual gay community. I would say that might represent 1% of people who use that in the gay community, and even smaller in the broader community. As a person who lived as a gay man for years, and then even before that, when I was not open, gay did not mean simply I have same-sex attraction. That was just the tip of the iceberg. What it really meant is this is who I was. And we can actually clarify when you ask people, when you say I am gay, do you mean this is what you feel, or do you mean this is who I am? And I would
Mm.
say 99.9% of the people would say, I mean, this is who I am.
Yeah.
We can't redefine words. So that's kind of just the term. We're not quibbling over words. We're talking about essence. We're talking
Yeah.
about the core of our being. But then the concept of side B is, this is related to my same-sex attractions, and then I have I have same-sex attractions, and same-sex attractions are not sinful. So that's why they're okay with then identifying with a concept that they think is not sinful. There's actually lots of discussion around people who write and talk on sexuality. Are same-sex attractions sinful or not? And essentially, there's two camps. One that says it is not sinful to have same-sex attractions, and then a smaller group within this broader scope of Christianity that would say it is sinful. Now, the issue with, I believe, that all this whole conversation is many times, the majority of times, they don't define what you mean by attractions. What do you mean by
Mm.
same-sex attractions? And that was my goal in trying to actually, let's just bring some clarity, because oftentimes when I'm reading and talk about it, they use all these terms interchangeably without defining. They
Yeah.
say same-sex
Hmm.
attraction, they're throwing in desire, temptation, and when the Bible sees desire and temptation as different categories.
Mm.
So what I want to do in my book and in the video series is to help kids and parents to see that, like, when we're talking about morality, which is a biblical concept, let's use the biblical categories of desire and temptation, because attractions could you mean both, either.
Hmm.
And so I just use the concept of desire and temptation. And like you say, Alisa, that temptation in and of itself is not sinful. Jesus was tempted in every way, but he was without sin. And then I know sometimes people will bring up James, well, we have this concept of desire, temptation. And I hear arguments that say, well, in this, desire comes from, temptation can come from our human desires. I would argue when that happens, that it's that desire that makes it sinful. But that's kind of getting into more of the weeds.
Hmm.
But this discussion, I don't believe that temptation in and of itself is sinful. But then let's talk about desire. People will say, well, desire isn't sinful until it turns into lust. Here's the problem with that argument. The Bible's use of the term desire and lust in the New Testament, or desire and covet in the Old Testament, it's the same word.
Mm.
In the New Testament, epithumia means, we translate it as either desire or lust. In the Old Testament, in Hebrew, the word for desire or covet is the Hebrew word chamad. Same Hebrew word, same Greek word. So it's not that a desire turns into lust. Wrongly ordered desire is lust, or it is coveting. So I think that's very important. So you can't have a same-sex sexual desire that isn't sinful. It is sinful. So actually what we're talking about is not simply quibbling over words. We're talking about what is sin, what is repentance, what is our understanding of our sin nature. And so when we understand it in that context, we know that we should never, if we're clinging to our old self who should be dead, we're trying to resuscitate our old creation, our old man, and trying to then identify with the first Adam when we should be identifying with the second Adam.